I tried so hard and read so far. In the end, it doesn't even matter. I read it all, this pointless crawl. In the end, it doesn't even matter. I put my trust in you. Okay. Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpattacake. I'm an author, robot, loin streamer, and today I'm also your savior. Look, I've got the laurels, I've got the brownish hair, you can pretend that my eyes are green, and just look at my skin glow in the light, baby. You know that I am the chosen one. Here to stave off the darkness. Plus, I've killed at least 17 people. That's gotta count for something, right? So in case you haven't guessed, today I'm doing a book review, or whatever you call what I do, of The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci. This book has only been out for a couple of years now, and I don't know if anybody is still looking for opinions on it, but you know, welcome to my corner, because bruh, I've got a lot to say. This is probably going to be a fairly long video. The first thing being that there are so many rich possibilities in this book. I've had a couple of discussions with Katie over at Year of the Author and Laura at Trope Trinity Trilogy about the different opportunities that could have happened with this book that just didn't happen. Like, there are so many different storylines that could have taken place here that didn't happen. It did something else. But so I'm going to take you through a fairly detailed plot summary, and then I'll tell you all about my responses to the content. So, starting off, this novel opens with a prologue. A woman is running, trying to escape her pursuers. Eventually, she's taken down while the Slayer says, "Blessed be the Savior." She's in a public place, so people from around everywhere come over to help her and notice that she's glowing. She is the kingdom's savior, the most sacred, basically a demigod of sorts, and she's pregnant. While the woman is hopeless, she's going to die. The villagers around her decide they must save the baby because that baby is the next savior. So the villagers cut her open and take out a perfectly healthy, quiet savior baby. Move on to the actual main character of this novel, Tobias, who is a physical laborer working in the fields. Upon leaving, he goes through town, which is doing the annual celebration for the birth of the Savior, a girl so blessed that she saves the kingdom from darkness and sickness. Enter now into an explanation of how the Savior has changed the world by curing everything bad just by existing. Of course, Toby is a sad boy and hates pretty much everything about his life. He's like, screw off celebrations, I don't want anything to do with this, and he returns home. From there, his mom criticizes him from working out in the sun for so long he's got a tan. We get a report on what happened to Toby's family. His sister's unable to walk and is in terrible pain. His father is dead, his family is... and he basically works to take care of them while his mother stays home to take care of his disabled sister. We're introduced to more information about the Savior, including that her mother was murdered and that she just turned of age, so the kingdom's about to hold the annual tournament to help find her a warrior husband that can protect her and rule the kingdom with her. It's supposed to be the bloodiest tournament in kingdom history to prove the man can protect the Savior because obviously she's so valuable and in danger constantly, so her betrothed must be strong and brave. Milo, a friend of Toby, appears at his house and takes him away to drink and just, kind of talk. All the while they're sipping on something good, he's telling Toby how he's going to enter the tournament to win the Savior's hand and a hero's glory. If he dies, well, at least he'll die with the glory of a hero, and isn't that just how any man would actually want to go out? Plus, the winner of the competition not only gets marriage, but power, and everyone who enters gets money sent to their family. Toby's like, "You're a freaking idiot, and you're gonna die." And Miles like, worth it though. Toby returns home to hear his sister in massive pain and sees his mother taking care of her. He's told to go to bed, where he thinks about how miserable his family is from their poorness, the pain, and how much that money from the tournament would help his family. But he doesn't want to enter. The next morning, Toby runs to the apothecary to get drugs for his sister, but they're closed because of the celebrations. Meanwhile, random people in town bother him about entering the tournament to get the girl, and Toby is like, "Holy shit, no, I don't want anything to do with this. Go away, I hate people." He runs into Milo, who is still super stoked about entering, and he's like, "Bruh, I'ma win this competition." At this point, Milo deserves to win this whole book just because of his playfulness, optimism, and, no, that's pretty much it. Just that he's got a good attitude. He is legit what a main character in a story like this should be like. Toby is still not going to enter the contest, but he'll go stand in line for hours with other entrants alongside Milo, keeping him company. Once he's separated from Milo, he returns home. His mother yells at him for being late because she thought that he had entered the tournament, and so she was upset and thought, he wasn't going to be coming back. And they need him to be the workhorse to bring home the monies. Angst about his life ensues as Toby rolls around in bed for hours until he decides to go check into the tournament. After being evaluated for everything from brains to semen sample, he enters with the title The Artist, because everybody in the contest is given, or the tournament is given, a title as relates to what sort of skills is their main set. I would have thought, and Toby got The Artist because he interned with an artist. Even though he was a day laborer before his father died, he was, I would say you would have to have more money if you're going to be an artist and intern as an artist, but that might just be my assumption. Wimbledon, the fat, greasy tournament guide, comes in and explains everything to Toby, including how there are two groups of 10 men in the tournament. They're separated into what is called the savants and the beasts. As you can imagine, the flowery artists are in the savant group, and the brutal bones and steel for breakfast are among the beasts. They're also the beefcakes. After an explanation, it's go time. First, each of the combatants are introduced to the kingdom with their laurels, and this is where Toby sees Milo, and then all of the cock-wagging beasts. Despite the boys going into this thing knowing that they're probably going to die for this girl, none of them get to see the savior before they're taken underground to the labyrinth/tunnel, which will be their first challenge. Just putting it aside and here that this entire tournament would have been better if the men were all naked the whole time. Not just for the show of it all, but just think of the blood sport, the vulnerability, the intimidation of looking at all of the right things all the time. Also, the discomfort of some dude's balls bouncing against you as he strangles you. Or maybe you're into that. I'm just saying, a missed opportunity was had here. Anyways, also would have saved on the doing of laundry. I'm just saying. Anyway, the first task is everyone walking down an endless tunnel together, like with no goal to kill anyone, by the way. This doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but that's how it is. The main beast, Kaleo, beats the jester to death because he's annoying and walks away. And I mean, fair way to turn off a jukebox, okay? I understand the man's frustration. The jester's voice was probably echoing in this tunnel, making it all the more infuriating. Everyone else continues down the tunnel. During this trial, Milo also is pushed into a trap by Kaleo, and the shame of it all, the shame of this death cannot be overstated. I'll talk about that in my notes later, but I have to question why Kaleo doesn't just kill Toby at this moment as well, after Toby literally jumps on him and lands a punch in his face. The only reason that I've got is that he's the MC, so nothing bad's allowed to happen to him here, but Kaleo's already killed someone just for being annoying, and he doesn't even punch Toby back after he gets jumped. Like, right now you're already DT-ing the worst bad guy in this group, or who is being propped up to be the main rival, because he can't hit Toby back even the first time he gets punched in the face. And I get that he just killed Milo, but we're seeing that Toby immediately has plot armor and will not suffer for what will be the next 550 pages. At the end of it all, the remaining men are healed by maidens who work for the savior. Toby's outraged that Milo was killed by his competitors, even though this had always been a stipulation of the entire tournament, and Toby had told Milo how stupid he was because he was going to die if he entered. Toby still thinks that Kaleo should be punished for the death. Then, while talking to one of the maidens, Toby and all of the men are called fools for entering this tournament to die for a woman that they've never met. And Toby is like, excuse me, ho, you're talking about the savior. And acting like he suddenly cares when he spent the first 2 chapters of this book complaining about how stupid this all was and how much he doesn't care about the savior. I guess Milo's love for the savior got transferred in to Toby when he died. because it was just a really weird switch from Toby's point of view. The lady tells Toby that he doesn't even know what the lady looks like, and maybe she'll be an uggo terrible person, but Toby continues to defend the savior on account of who she is. The lady wishes Toby luck, tells him that tomorrow's going to be dangerous, and then she leaves. Return to the tournament the next day, and there's another trial in the tunnel. There's obviously a bit of shenanigans going on, and one of the dudes is attacked brutally, though not killed, and Toby carries him to the end where the healers help him. One of the healers, though, stares at Toby with surprised eyes and goes, "You would save your competitor?" And we know where this is going, and we're not even 1/5 of the way through this book yet. It's now recovery time after the second round, and everyone is going to get to meet the savior for the first time. A healer/maiden of the savior comes in to make all of the boys presentable because they're smelly and have been doing rough things in the tunnels. Not the sexy kind of rough things, mind you. Toby asks the woman about the other competitors while she's fixing him up. Then, once he's ready, the man he saved during the competition comes over. He introduces himself as Flynn, and he's gonna be Toby's new best friend. Get ready for Milo 2.0. Toby doesn't want any of it and keeps trying to shrug off the guy until everything is interrupted with the savior's introduction. Toby is freaking bored by this whole show of things and lets everybody know that he doesn't want to be there. Legit, he is so unmotivated to do anything, even just to survive, to get back to his mom and sister after winning some money. You'd think that he'd be aware that there were ways to be dismissed from this contest if he just survives long enough, since it is a tradition. But nah, he's just like, "Fug, I hate everything about this. I hate everybody. I don't care." He should legit have some kind of goal if he wants to pull the reader with him. But I guess he hates his family too, and that's not enough of a motivation to keep him drawing forward. The men are given permission to ask the savior a single question to make their first impression. The person who leaves the best first impression is going to win the round and get to spend some time alone with her. When it comes to Toby, he asks what her name is. She says it's Cassima. Some guy called Adonis wins because he used a pickup line, and Toby feels nothing but retreats, trying to convince himself that he cares enough at least to stay alive. While Adonis hangs out in peace with the savior, the others have to learn how to make an elixir. Just kidding, it's actually a poison, and the instructor gets them all to drink it before telling them that. This is the third round of the competition, and the boys must now make a potion to heal themselves after what they were told during that lesson, or else they're going to die. As you'd expect, Toby survives just fine. He wakes up to some doctor hanging over him, making sure that he's alive. Only one person died during this round, and it was the poet. It's okay because he probably wasn't going to make it much further anyway, being a poet and all. No shade. Here, Toby's introduced to a healer named Leila and finds out that her name means darkness. I feel like this was a missed opportunity for theme, though maybe the author tried, because the theme of embracing darkness really isn't used throughout the book, though it feels like there was an attempt made. But Toby didn't become dark because he'd always sort of come off as dark. Like, even from the first moment that we saw him in this competition with Kaleo, his first response to Milo being killed was, "I'm gonna kill that guy." So the murderous impulses were already there, and he wasn't giving into anything. And then we'll very soon see that the first opportunity he gets to be in a one-on-one competition, he taunts somebody as he kills them. So there really is no progression toward a darkness, though I think that was attempted here, if that makes sense. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. So anyway, Toby's back to hanging with the boys, eating and drinking until, oopsies, they were all roofied. When they wake up, they're in round 4 of the competition, tied to a table and just waiting to be tortured. The goal here is for the MC, by that I mean host, to cause pain in hopes of making any of the boys panic. The explanation is that if they are to wed the savior, then they must show complete control of their emotions. Despite being stabbed in the leg, Toby clearly survives as some other guy panics first and is the only one dying in that round. The boys are chilling again, playing cards as the healers come around. Leila stabs a combatant for being rude, and then she goes off to tend to Toby, being like, "I'm gonna help you win this thing because everybody else sucks. You hear me?" She then takes him through secret passages in the labyrinth so that they can hang out and look at the stars while eating peaches. That's not a euphemism. They were actually just eating peaches. Toby reveals that he doesn't care about the Savior because she might be beautiful, but he doesn't care about beauty, and he has no feelings for the Savior. Leila's obviously delighted spending her time with Toby, and they don't want to leave each other, even when they get tired. Toby stays up too late and misses the announcement of who won the anxiety competition. It doesn't really matter because it wasn't him. Go through round 5 with killer pigs, and round 6 requires the boys to present the Savior with a gift. Toby, being the artist, is obviously going to paint. He uses charcoal from the tunnel after receiving his canvases. Though he struggles at first to be inspired to do art, it's just been too long. He hasn't painted anything in years. He can't think of what to draw. So Leila hangs out with him, and through the power of thirst, he comes up with 4 different charcoal drawings of Leila. He has a panic attack because he's like, oh no, I can't present pictures of another woman to Cosima as a gift, right? That would just be too much of a disgrace, right? Like, no artist has, like, especially still life artist, has ever presented something to somebody for what was already in front of them. Anyway, it's just a present, but Toby fears that if he gives Cosima images of Leila, everyone will think that he's in love with Leila, and that's blasphemy, so they'll kill him. So he doesn't present anything as a gift, because forfeiting the round is somehow a better option than just giving her paintings of another woman. Turns out, if everyone had just cooperated and gave some kind of gift, no one would have died this round. Instead, now they're voting people off the island, and it's a draw between Toby and some guy called the Giant, as half of the group turned on the Giant for his making rude comments about the Savior. Since there are 2 people with a bunch of votes to get kicked off the island, the tournament decides that they're going to have to fight each other in a good old gladiatorial style. I don't really understand why. If this is the bloodiest, most brutal tournament in history, both of them didn't just get the axe right then, especially if the tournament is supposed to prove loyalty to the Savior. What people are saying about the Giant should make him ineligible, and obviously Toby's lack of gift should also make him automatically ineligible. Beating the other won't promise that they actually care about the Savior. It means that they care about their life. After the judgment that the 2 will fight each other, Leila pulls Toby into a tent and lectures him about sabotaging himself, saying how his art was beautiful and he should have presented it. She fawns over him and says, "Don't worry, I'll help you beat the Giant. Everything is going to be fine." Toby, Flynn, and Leila all work together to train Toby about how to use the sword so that he can defeat the Giant. They guess what weapon each of the guys will use, and then sure enough, they're correct on what their guesses were. Unsurprisingly, Toby wins pretty easily. It's also discovered that he was blessed by the Savior before this round of the tournament. After the battle, Leila returns to treat Toby's injuries and have a little romantic moment with him again, where initially I thought Toby learned that Leila was the real Savior at this second, but he wasn't allowed to say anything. Their conversation to me was really suggestive, but apparently that's not what happened because Toby doesn't learn that Leila is the Savior until the final chapter of the book. But I was pretty confused with Toby's ignorance for the entirety of the novel. The next morning, Toby's met by the sovereign himself, Brontes, and he's like, "My daughter likes you. But why? You're just filthy artist." And he's big mad because Brontes is like, "Fuck you. I like warriors more than I like pansy-ass painters, and that's what you are." Somehow, in the middle of this brutal death battle tournament, after Brontes was like, "Gosh, freaking darn it, I hate artists," he's now like, "Would everybody please gather and recite me some fine, free-form poetry? Especially you warriors with small brain. I want poetry. I want beautiful poetry for my daughter. And don't mention your cocks." Now, I don't want to be a stickler here, but I was told that this was the most gruesome, disturbing tournament in Kingdom history. Am I to take it that nothing says torture more than free-form poetry by a mixture of teenagers and warrior men? Okay, I'll accept that. Toby stares at Leila the whole time he's free-forming his poems, and he ultimately wins some private time with Cosima. Despite the obvious eyes he was making at Leila the whole time and how he's spending every free moment he has with her, she is still jealous that he won this competition and will be hanging out with Cosima, so Leila storms out of the room. Clearly, what any emotionally stable person would do. Obviously, the better option for Toby in this situation would have been to not try at all and to lose like he did with the last round where she was like, why would you throw the competition? Clearly, he should have thrown the competition a second time, because it worked out so well the first time. Toby broods the whole time that he's with Cosima because he doesn't like her and he'd rather spend his time with Leila. He's pretty much just rude and dismissive because of this. While Cosima flirts and throws herself at Toby, he's just like, I'm fine with talking. It is what it is. And so that's what they end up doing. All the while, Toby's thinking of Leila. Cosima goes for a kiss, and Toby, unimpressed, eventually returns to the boys. Leila's over there with them because they got out of a competition round and are injured, and Leila's pissed off that Toby spent any time at all with Cosima. She snaps at him when he tries to talk to her and refuses to really look at him much at all. So Toby goes to pout around the campfire with the guys. Meanwhile, Leila's helping some other competitor who's getting handsy, and everyone can visibly see the guy molesting Leila, but no one does anything, nobody says anything, nobody stands up. Not even Toby, because he's like, she's mad at me, so I can't interact with her at all, not even to protect her from molestation as she screams no from across the room. I'll just sit here and watch. Leila ends up Sparta kicking the guy into a bottomless pit, and that's the end of that. She walks out unfazed that she just killed someone. So Toby's lamenting Leila's frustration with him, confused why she won't talk to him, while another maiden named Delphi prepares him for the contest. Delphi tells Toby that he should maybe talk to Leila to get her to chill out, and Toby's like, but she won't talk to me, so how am I supposed to do that? So they come up with the plan that Toby should fail the next competition on purpose because the punishment for the next competition is, conveniently enough, you're not going to die. They're just going to put you in solitary confinement where Leila will come and visit you. You would think that losing this competition would result in death, but apparently a punishment worse than death is solitary with Leila. I guess I'll accept that logic. So Toby agrees to losing the next round, and the next round of the tournament is actually a matching game and savior trivia, if you find certain symbols in the cards. The first person to answer the trivia wrong would be the loser, and clearly that becomes Toby. Now, just as expected, Toby is sitting in solitary confinement when Leila comes for a visit. She's like, I can't believe you lost that. You're smarter than that. I cannot believe you threw the game. And he's like, I wanted to talk to you about what happened with Cosima. Leila starts freaking out at this whole thing and won't talk to Toby, going, I don't want to hear about your time with my sister, because she already believes that Toby slept with Cosima, because Cosima apparently sleeps with everybody, and every time Toby tries to talk to her, she tells him to shut up. Literally everyone in this contest is spending time with Cosima, and the poem that won Toby that one contest was said while he was literally staring at Leila. So how do you misconstrue that? And legit, why are we here with this argument? Toby even broke his hand just to spend time with Leila, and she still refuses to listen to him talk, saying that he doesn't really care about her. All of this pointing to Leila being emotionally unstable. All things considered, this is how the contest is set up. Why would anyone think any of the guys in this contest would actually care about the savior and not the money, glory, and power that comes along with being betrothed to her? Eventually, Leila accepts Toby's apology that he spent time, apparently, with Cosima, and they talk about first lovers. Toby's first kiss was stolen by Milo's beefcake sister, who forced herself on him because everyone in this book has to suck. Like, literally everyone. Then, Leila sobs about how no one notices her, and Toby's like, did you know? I used to be a member of One Direction myself. And so then he starts courting Leila with, she don't know she's beautiful. Legit, that's how it goes down. The two continue with an overly long conversation about what would you be doing if you weren't here right now, where Toby says that he wants to be an artist again and Leila just wants to leave the palace. They play the game of what would you do for a while until they're making out and getting turned on by the forbiddenness of their situation, even though it's insanely obvious that Leila is in fact the savior. But somehow Toby doesn't know that. This is just so their kissing can be broken up by Toby being like, this is so freaking dangerous though. Like, it's hot, but it's dangerous. But the danger makes it hotter. My love for you is blasphemous since you aren't the savior, but that just makes it so much hotter. Everything ends up fine, though. They're like, it's fine that this is forbidden. We're really into each other, and we'll figure out what we need to do when we need to figure out when to do it. Then Toby is left to finish off solitary by himself. The next tournament round includes finding keys in the water. Toby... What's the word that I want? Toby brazenly jiggles Kaleo's balls. You know the ones, while they're both underwater. The assault on Kaleo results in no repercussions whatsoever. So much for that big bad warrior dude, right? Though I guess that was just some casual flirting, huh? Then Toby's attacked by a sea creature. He's pulled to shore and no one will help him until the round is over. Toby, though damaged, is emptying keys out of his pocket because he doesn't want to win the round, and he is probably winning the round. He takes some out of his pockets to lower his numbers so that he can lose again and spend more time with Leila and not end up with Cosima. Yeah, instead of actually just letting him get hurt early enough so that he couldn't compete very well, he needed to actually compete well, get attacked, still compete well, and then self-sabotage, because Toby is the best at everything. Clearly, look into his eyes and tell me that he is not the best around. After everything, Toby passes out. When he wakes up, he's healed and he didn't miss anything. There will be no lasting effects from this terrible damage, but a scar, and he's more than open to seeking Leila out so that the two of them can hang out and make out. Well, in this situation, another competitor called the Dog walks in. Despite how seeing this could get Toby kicked out of the competition and disqualified, for no reason at all, the Dog is like, you know what, I will keep your secret, it's fine. Do you want to be my best friend, though? Which, if everything in this competition didn't work out perfectly for Toby all the time, that'd actually be pretty fun to have the Dog be more dog-like. This just felt like another plot convenience, as the Dog is dumb and thinks that Toby looks like a pretty woman and isn't actually any competition at all. I also didn't really understand how or why the Dog was let into the competition to be a potential husband for Leila, because it really didn't feel like a personality match or somebody that'd be competent enough to take over for the Sovereign, you know? So in the next round of the tournament, it's everybody's favorite, a group challenge with teams of 4. Toby's being a prick to Flynn because Flynn said out loud in surprise that Toby was blessed by the Savior for a second time. Toby can't help but be a jackass all of the time, and so he continues to do so now. The challenge is simple. Pick a direction in the labyrinth and survive to the end. Clearly, everyone in Toby's group is an idiot, and they argue amongst themselves while Toby finds a way out of the labyrinth. And just as they get to safety, the group sees other teams on the other side who have already completed the challenge, and they're murdering one of the other competitors because the Savior favors him. I had to pause here again because I didn't understand how this happened. The name of this character never really came up as important before, and Toby has now been blessed by the Savior twice. The killing of this random guy who obviously didn't have favor, and everyone was ignoring Toby who obviously did have favor, didn't make any sense. It just felt like Toby needed an excuse to get superpowered again, because then he executes another guy that killed the first guy with the help of some of his other competitors and Leila's encouragement. So every time Toby gets pissed off, he basically goes Super Saiyan. So the killing of the other guy just felt like a reason for Toby to go Super Saiyan and murder another, because Toby is clearly the Savior's favorite. Leila then informs Toby that the Dog has been released from the tournament. Toby gets his hopes up that he too could be spared, but Leila tells him no, only one person will be released, which is a blatant lie, we'll find out. While Toby dooms and is depressed because he's sure that he's gonna die, he's also so in love with Leila he's screwed no matter the turnout. Leila keeps everything to herself that could have actually not only calmed but encouraged Toby to fight stronger. You don't think that he'd go power level 9,000 if you said that you were the Savior, and if he won that he would get to marry you, the girl that he is in love with now? He'd kill literally all of these people between tournament matches if Leila was like, yeah, if when they all die, you and me, this is us. Speaking of which, why are there no consequences to killing people between rounds? If there are no consequences, then why is everyone in the back room not literally picking people off as quickly as they possibly can in order to seize power? The remaining 10 players are now moved to the surface because they're being taken to the palace. They walk through a garden with suspicious statues that Leila warned Toby about. Toby tries to warn the other players to not look at them, and someone still does, and, they meet their end. Toby makes it out fine, though, and that's all that matters. Combatants are shown to their rooms, and Toby forgets that he's in a death tournament because there's an easel next to his bed. Now, as guests at the palace, the boys are unbecoming, so flocks of women enter to clean each of them up. Enter into a long segment where a handful of women touch, flirt, and fawn over Toby while talking about his ability to please women. Then, everyone's taken to a party where Toby is ogled by more women. He starts dancing with Delphi, who randomly starts talking about his cock while inserting her own sexual conquests as a lesbian. The conversation throughout this chapter almost felt like a loop as they went on forever and repeatedly said the same things to Toby up until he finally got to dance with Leila. They have some sappy romance moments together while they dance, talking for a while until they're supposed to switch partners. Toby, however, isn't ready to switch partners, so he trips Leila so they can dance another round together and keep their intimate flirting going just a little bit longer. So an aside, this chapter felt really self-indulgent and long. The two are finally broken up because of the dancing and having to switch roles, and the sovereign Brontes approaches to be like, Toby, I hear everyone talking about how you're going to be king. I laugh at that idiocy. You are a pansy-ass artist. You will not be king. At this point, I bet those guys in the tunnel are big mad that they killed the wrong guy. Toby's only response to this is, oh, no. I'm not gonna win this tournament. Just look at me. I am totally just, like, murder fodder. I've only won one competition anyway, so, like, point proven, right? I'm kind of a loser. The Sovereign, being the ultimate obvious bad guy he is, gives Toby this look. And then he says, young man, I suggest that you fuck bitches, because you are going to die. Of course I'm paraphrasing, but that is the legit gist of what he says. And then he walks away. Toby leaves the party after that, uninterested in anything that's not Leila, and he's obviously not going to be dancing with her anymore today. Later, Flynn's asking Toby where he went during the party and how he missed his opportunity to cozy up to the Savior. Flynn is also like, I'm pretty sure that the Savior is totally digging the cut of my jib. You better watch out, Toby. I'm about to win this whole masterpiece. I'm not entirely sure how Flynn can be so confident and say that so directly to a guy that he knows has been blessed by the Savior twice. But Flynn is confident that Cosima is his for the take. Then, all of the competitors are playing this bizarre game of, if I don't win, who do you think would win? Where they all pick someone else in the group to win out over them. This seems silly and not like it would work with a bunch of alpha gladiatorial types, who would be more like, I'm gonna be king, no buts. There's only one guy in this group that laughs the whole game off saying, no, I'm gonna be the winner. Freaking jeez. And someone else is like, aren't you being a little cocky, though? No, I would say that you should be hoping that you are confident enough in yourself to win at this point, because the only options right now are win or die, and y'all came here for power anyway, so I don't see the point in feigning modesty, especially among these other people, like these specific personality types. If you show weakness, they're coming for you. So why would you put yourself in this situation? Now, what remains of the combatants must be prepared to make their entrance to the crowd. Toby's being honored as a crowd favorite, and all he does is throw a fit and swear at the people for enjoying this tournament. Like, these savages enjoy tradition. How dare they? Even one of the other combatants is like, bro, why are you so moody? We signed up for this. We're getting paid to be here. Throwing a fit is dumb. Jeez. But all Toby can give back is, no, I don't care. I hate this, and shame on anyone who likes it. Even me for being here. I played myself by being here. I can't help but feel like Toby was a brat at this point, coming in here for all of the money but not wanting to do any of the work or take the risks to earn it. He doesn't have to like what's going on, but playing the part he signed up for seems reasonable to me. Like, he knew what he was getting into when he signed up for the money. Now we're down to the last 8 guys. After introductions, Toby sees his family briefly, and Kaleo makes a comment about Toby's sister being a cripple. Again, Toby lands a punch on Kaleo's face and gets no hitbacks from the biggest bad boy of the gladiators. Instead, Kaleo just laughs about how he loves seeing Toby lose control of himself and panic. This just exemplifies why the last 437 pages of the death tournament have felt like a waste of time. Toby does something, and there's nothing that he gets back in return. Nothing to make him uncomfortable, nothing to put him at risk. Smack the big bad daddy around, and he laughs going, "Oh, you're so precious." From here, Toby and Leila hang out a little more, flirting more, fret over circumstances, and play a game together. The next challenge is in 2 groups of 4. Retrieve a rose, try not to die, but y'all can kill each other if you really want to. Nonsensically, during this section, Toby and his team find the rose, but Toby and some other guy argue about who is going to be the one to deliver that rose to get extra quality time with the savior, while the other 2 on their team are completely silent. I didn't really understand this whole dynamic in this situation. They're all literally vying over power or fretting over death. So, Toby aside, why would no other man want that rose? It gets you closer to the prize, closer to the win, which for all of the guys is not death. That is the big prize at this point. Toby just struggles so hard to not win first place, okay? Flawless as he is, he can't help but default to win. After the round is over, one of the combatants decides that he doesn't want to do this anymore and tells everyone that he quits before storming out of the room. It turns out that you're not allowed to just quit a death tournament once you've signed up for it. There's a hearing where the sovereign berates the guy before having him killed for dishonoring his daughter. Thank you. Appreciate you. Now, everybody knows there's no better aphrodisiac than murder and death, which is why, immediately following the execution, Toby and Leila enter a makeout session. Blood, death, and threats no longer affect his boner in a negative way. Turns out, this is actually just a dream sequence, and I'm not sure if that makes Toby better or worse. Now, Toby's roommate, Orion, is talking to him and wants to be his friend. I'm not sure why Orion wants to be his friend. Toby has been a jerk this whole time, but here we are. Toby's roommate wakes him up, letting him know that the most brutal, bloody tournament in Kingdom history has given them the day off to just relax and do as they please. Orion tells Toby about his life and his dead wife. Orion also says that he's only in this tournament because he became bored with his life. I personally think that he is also mildly suicidal since his wife and his child died. This again left me with some major questions about the vetting system for the tournament with potential suitors for the savior. You've got a bunch of power-hungry jackholes, some guy who legit tried to molest Leila, and a suicidal widower. Who was picking these combatants, saying, "Oh yeah, this will work for the savior's husband"? Toby then goes off to bond with Leila, and she tells him how she has been murdering her father's vultures, what Toby would call senators. Toby, being the good guy that he is, goes, "Oh, you're assassinating people en masse? I guess that's fine. You've probably got a good reason for it, so, I'm not gonna pry." Then, the 2 of them go on to exchange secrets of bad things that they've done to other people. Toby talks about pissing in some guy's bathwater, and while Leila brags about having smacked Cosima across the face following one of the tournament competitions. She legit is like, "I was angry and it felt good to do it," as she snickers. And Toby is just like, "Holy shit, abusing your sister is hella hot. Consider me aroused." They make out again, heading to second base when Leila stops them, saying that things are too complicated right now to go any further, so they should just stick to making out for the rest of the night. The winners of the flower challenge get to go and spend time with Cosima. While that happens, Toby and Raphael, the only 2 losers remaining, hang out and chat. They trash talk Cosima, saying she's nothing but a bitch. Meanwhile, Raphael also calls Toby out on his thing that he's got going with Leila. Again, another competitor who could easily take Toby out is like, "Nah, dude, you're fine. I won't tell anyone." Toby still gives him the 3rd degree, like he's trying to convince the guy to not tell anyone. Toby doesn't accept Raphael's words at first, but when he does, the 2 switch off to talk about Leila being not like other girls who are self-serving cold bitches, and that pretty much describes Cosima. according to them. Apparently, Leila bragging about murdering people and slapping her sister just a chapter ago don't come to mind, but okay. I'm accepting that all of the characters in this book are morally black, and you can't convince me otherwise. I don't know if that was the intention, but I have no other way of seeing any of these characters as good. Calm down. Calm yourself, Tot. The attack on Cosima seems pointless and petty in this scene, serving no great value beyond talking Cosima down and Leila up. Then, the two talk about how they're better than everyone else, and anyone who loves the tournament is an immoral sheep. My notes actually said, I'm so sick of hearing about how all of these characters complain about how everyone sucks and there is no one with any redeeming qualities whatsoever involved in this universe. Oh yeah, because Raphael's also only there because his brother is in debt. And it's his responsibility to get his brother out of debt. The two are interrupted eventually by Toby being summoned. He's taken to a room where it looks like a Daddy Sovereign is big mad that Leila's been sneaking around healing the boys up between rounds, despite him raising his hand and really threatening to smack Leila. He's also got a whole gaggle of other servant girls standing around them watching. He's just about to pimp slap Leila when Toby comes in and is like, no, don't! And Daddy Sovereign is like, boy, leave. And Toby's like, no, I'm not scared of you. Don't hit women, because he knows that nobody can actually hit him back as well. So Brontes, being the true alpha that he is, just huffs and walks away because somehow he's a neutered king who can do nothing with this defiant brat telling him what he can and can't do in his own house. I don't know. Toby then begs Leila to tell him what's going on, but she's like, no, I can't. I'm busy. And then she runs away. Like father, like daughter, I guess. The next round of the tournament is about to start, and the usual proctor has been replaced with the Sovereign. Toby is now a mature archer, despite admitting that he never touched a bow and arrow before. Orion is killed by Kaleo during this round, which is fine because he can now be with his wife again. Rest in peace, Orion. Toby comes back, angry and breaking things, and is delivered to Leila, where he breaks down crying and tells her that he thinks he's in love with her. Sitting at dinner with everyone later, Leila and Cosima are at both of Toby's sides. Leila's flirting underneath the table, while Cosima is also apparently fondling Toby's balls. I wasn't sure what the point of the scene was, since Toby just sort of leaves and is immediately summoned to a room where he meets Leila, and the two of them talk about the palace art and other things. During this new scene, Toby tells Leila that Cosima was feeling him up underneath the table, and Leila is upset at Toby, like he was cheating on her. I don't know why any of this was necessary. Like, this book is just inserting random moments of jealousy that change nothing but make Leila look like a psychopath. Yeah. So Leila is showing Toby all of these gifts that she's received in this fancy wall in the palace where she is going to be able to put her own art that she receives, and Toby is somehow still not the least bit suspicious that something might be up with Leila, and she might not be just some kind of servant girl. Oh well. So Toby returns to his room and mopes because Orion is gone and the bed is empty. He gets dressed up by Delphi to be prepared to meet with the Savior again. As he and the others are walked through the palace, some of the other boys are rude, and somehow Delphi is surprised by this, despite being the one who handpicked literally all of the guys for this competition. Like, I don't understand the surprise at this point in this scene based on what happens in the short story Great Love. That is assuming that the story, Great Love, is actually canon and not like a deleted scene that is no longer considered part of this, and it was just shared as an extra that was cut out because it didn't make any sense anymore. But according to that story, Delphi was the prick picker, so she shouldn't be surprised by the dispositions of any of the guys in this group. The remaining boys are brought to dinner again, with Brontes favoring Kaleo. Meanwhile, Toby is in a pissy mood again. He doesn't want to win, but he also doesn't want Kaleo to get anything, so everything sucks even more. And then it's time to talk about sex lives again. The table laughs at Toby for not wanting to share the conquests that he's had, while Toby says y'all are inadequate if you need to talk about who you've bedded. Considering both sides mock each other for their sexual habits, I don't think anyone looked better than anyone else in this situation. The angry heat of the room rises, and someone finally hits Toby, but only after Toby cuts off his ear. Toby goes Super Saiyan and overpowers Drake, somebody who is twice his size. The only thing that saves Drake from certain death is Leila coming into the room and telling everybody to stop. Toby's then brought to be alone with Leila, and she shows him some of the slash marks she's gotten recently, maybe from assassination attempts. Toby is like, "You, please baby, tell me who hurt you and I'll kill them." And Leila's like, "I can't. I'm weak. I don't feel safe." And Toby comforts her until the end. Skip forward to Toby painting in his room. Leila comes for a visit and the two get sensual and touchy, only for Flynn to interrupt, saying that they've been summoned for a challenge in the bathhouse. What a weird place to hold a competition, huh? Must be checking some oral pleasure skills. Right. Wait. No. They're just discharging another competitor peacefully. I thought Leila said that wasn't going to happen. So Toby then shit-talks the Sovereign right to his face, and then he shit-talks back because there are no risks, and all the Sovereign does is tell Toby that he's gonna die in the remainder of this competition, somehow overlooking the fact that Toby has been blessed by the Savior multiple times at this point. Brontes should know better that Toby isn't going to die, and if he was actually a threatening villain, he would do something about it. The dismissal ends and Toby mopes around some more since he's stuck in this competition with the top four, and he doesn't like Cosima, but he doesn't want to die, and those are really his only options. Flynn confronts Toby about his banging Leila while also being like, "I'm gonna be the champion because I love Cosima. But I want to win her fair and square, so you need to dump Leila and fight in this battle for real." Toby mocks Flynn for his professed feelings over Cosima, and I don't really exactly understand why Toby feels the need to do this since he has fallen in love with another girl during the same amount of time. But there's that. Flynn and Toby just argue back and forth, with Flynn threatening Toby that he better break up with Leila. Flynn leaves after being like, "Dump her and then fight me, bitch." So Toby is sitting in the banquet, eating, thinking about life when he is summoned to the study where Leila tells him about the next challenge. She's going to help him win. Toby has a meltdown when he's with her because of the threats from Flynn. The two keep cutting each other off, unwilling to listen to what the other has to say about the situation until ultimately Toby says that Leila was a mistake and there's no way out of any of this. Leila gets upset and inconsolable while Toby is trying to make things up to her. Leila won't listen anymore, though. She's just so offended that Toby thinks that he is to marry someone that he doesn't love or die and there is no way out, and she can't even fathom why, or that she has the solve for this problem by just admitting that she is ultimately the person that he would end up with. She just is hurt because he keeps saying, "I hate the Savior," without knowing that she is actually the Savior. But the only reason that Toby doesn't know she's the Savior and he'll keep saying, "I don't want to be with the Savior," is because she keeps lying to him. Yes, it's a mess. It's all a mess spawned by Leila lying, and then Leila blames Toby for not knowing what she knows. So the scene ends with nothing being resolved. Leila is hysterically crying, and Toby is told to fuck off. The next challenge arrives, and it's a 4-person free-for-all brawl. Also, a bunch of foreign royals come in and bet on who will win. It's a bunch of mustache-twirling villains that are all very openly shit-talking in the same language, like the same direct language. All of the men obviously hate Toby, though some of their wives are infatuated with him. Toby smack-talks them all and eventually gets beat up for being a moody bitch, to which the narrative writes, Toby, bathed in his blood, relishes the reprieve from his numb existence, the reminder that he was still alive. Sounds like Toby is about to start an emo band, circa 2002. Of course, a woman believes Toby will win, and it's probably physically impossible for a man to actually like Toby. After the betting round ends, Toby sees Leila as she leaves the area, and she's all bloody with knife in her hand and marks on her body again. Toby tries to follow her, but she disappears before he can catch up. On the day of the battle, it's raining and Drake dies. Another banquet to celebrate the end of the round. Toby is moping more because he's alone and hates everything. Drunk, he takes up one of his charcoal paintings to Leila's empty wall in the gallery. There, he runs into Pippa, who is one of the servant girls, and she comforts him until he falls asleep. She tells him that he is in love with the Savior. He dreams about having sex with Leila up until she turns into Cosima, and he panics himself to being awake again. Toby's cleaned up to look nice and is brought to Cosima's room. Cosima tries really, really hard now to seduce Toby, but only makes him angry because he's just not into her and she's kind of being overly aggressive here. He runs out of the room and goes to Leila's room. She's pissed off hearing that Toby had been with Cosima and assumes that they had sex. Toby insists that nothing happened, but Leila doesn't want to hear it. At this point, she's hysterical, again, calling Toby a betrayer. Eventually, Leila comes to accept Toby's heart and confessions of what happened, and the two of them do have sex. Toby tells her that he doesn't want to be with the savior. He wants to be with her. So Leila starts sobbing again because she can't separate the title from herself, even though she knows that Toby is talking about Cosima. Instead, she's just bawling about how they've made up, but the problems are still there. Problems that are there because of her lying. You could fix this, Leila. In an instant. She admits that there are things that he doesn't know, but she's so panicked to tell him. And Toby is just like, okay, you don't have to tell me what's wrong until you feel like telling me, and I will just be here for you until you're ready to tell me. And so Leila is comforted by that, and the two of them fall asleep together. Toby wakes up to Leila beside him and determines that they need to talk about everything. But first, the combo turns into sex. Also, Leila tells Toby not to fight alongside Flynn and Kaleo. She's going to protect him from this final round of the tournament. She teases about telling Toby the truth, but she doesn't commit. Before anything substantial can happen, Delphi runs in to grab Leila, saying the package is here and we need to go. Leila tells Toby to stay put until she gets back and under no circumstances enter the final round of the contest. So, Toby is hanging out in Leila's room when he hears somebody coming. He tries to hide under the bed. It's useless because the intruder is Kaleo and he pulls Toby out while laughing. Oh, you're not Leila. Now, folks, the time has come. Kaleo is like,
it's my massive chode. Suck on my ding-a-ling. Suck my ding-a-ling, suck my ding-a-ling, suck my ding-a-ling, suck my ding-a-ling, suck my ding-a-ling. You can suck upon my ding-a-ling. You can taste upon my ding-a-ling. Don't you choke upon my ding-a-ling. You must suck upon my ding-a-ling.
it's rape time, boys. Actually, never mind. All Kaleo does is bring Toby to the Sovereign, and apparently the Sovereign refuses to let Kaleo have any bit of fun, even though Kaleo is, like, smacking that ass, and he's like, I want it, let me have it. And the Sovereign is like, no, just beat the shit out of him with a whip, and then try to break his bones, because we need to make it look like he got harmed during the tournament, but we have to put him at a disadvantage because we can't just hang him for whatever reason. Like, he is the crowd favorite, so we can't just call him a blasphemer and then kill him. So we're going to make it look like he got hurt in the competition, but everything that we're about to do to him is going to look like deliberate torture. But hey, don't do him up the butt. I don't really know how whipping is better than anal rape for believability of, like, harm done to somebody during the competition, but there we go. After all of that is said and done, with a little bit of maniacal laughter thrown in there just to be extra villainous, it's time for the final round of the competition, and they're all let loose in a labyrinth. At this point, Toby's not even limping anymore after everything that he went through. During the three-way battle, Toby becomes a master of everything, blessed by the Savior, and learns how to dual-wield swords on the fly. This results in Kaleo's head being chopped off, Flynn's betrayal turns into reconciliation, and Toby offers Flynn the win. Brontes orders Flynn to kill Toby, and the guards need to deal with Leila. I'm not sure why when she is the Savior, and they all know it, but there are some problems here. Everything gets out of hand, Leila reveals herself to be the Savior, and she saves Toby. Upon waking up after all of this, Leila has healed Toby, and she's telling him how Brontes wants to kill her. The tournament sucks and is evil, and Cosima was her stand-in as the Savior, but she kind of is a girl that just wants all of the attention. Also, Leila says, I'm in love with you. Emotionally unstable, she still gets upset when Toby says he doesn't want to be with the Savior because he wants to be with Leila. She says her feelings were hurt every time that he said that he didn't want to be with the Savior, even though he didn't know that the Savior was her. So She tries to give Toby orders to like make him flee the kingdom, but Toby is like, you can't stay here, it's dangerous for you too. Eventually, Toby convinces Leila to run away with him, and on their way out of the kingdom, they stop at Toby's family's house where I think they're grabbing his family to go with them, but also Toby convinces Leila to heal his sister, and that's where the story ends. It was a long book. It was a long summary. I know it was a long book, like almost 700 pages. So, first things first is I want to say that this novel had so many rich ideas embedded in it. Like, there were all kinds of different ways in which the story could have gone that I really liked. And as every time I've had a discussion with this book, it's brought on new ideas of where the story could have gone, or interpretations of the characters, or way that stuff could have just played out. And it had such a strong impact that it's kind of disappointing that it went the way that it did. I think that's what made this read the most disappointing for me. It had so much potential, and every time the potential was presented, it was overlooked and not used for this steady path of just protect the MC and don't let anything bad happen to them. So, that said, let's talk about stakes first. Because Toby was provided with an unending supply of cheat codes to keep him on course, it felt like the death tournament didn't have any teeth from the beginning. He continuously punches his warrior competitions in the face to receive no punishments of their own, and he even tickles the balls of one of them, and still, nothing. He'd win competitions without even trying. Every weapon he picked up, he became a master of. We already figured from the get-go that this isn't going to be a tragedy, so Toby will likely come out on top. But this took it to the next level for me by never allowing Toby any real debilitating damage in a physical, mental, or emotional way. In a way, it felt like the author let us know early on that Toby was playing with cheat codes all along. When he jumped Kaleo after Milo was killed, he landed a punch right on the strongest fighter, his biggest rival, and nothing happened after that. He should have had his ass spanked before getting cut off to show that there was still some kind of risk involved. Yet every time Toby lashed out, he had the power of a Super Saiyan because he got mad, and his opponents never hit him back. Sometimes they just laughed about getting smacked, and then every person who ran into him with the forbidden love promised not to tell anyone. Nothing had teeth, and everything was going to work out, which made everything feel pointless. On top of that, you've got Toby being magically healed from everything immediately following any damage he received. This all could have worked, but Toby never had any true suffering, so again, every round of the tournament felt sort of pointless. We knew that he wouldn't get hurt, he wouldn't suffer, and he'd ultimately make it to the top. I didn't get to watch that character struggle to survive, to get the girl that he wanted, to get the magic, to get to the bottom of this mystery. It was all pre-planned, and it played out that way with little deviation. Leila was the same way. She was going around killing people, and as the true savior, she was surrounded by these brutish guys that were obviously all insanely sketchy in character. One of them even molested her, and yet she was never in any true danger. There was no risk to her disobeying Brontes or fraternizing with the gladiators when she wasn't supposed to be, causing tension to be non-existent. She didn't even get in trouble for killing or permitting the death of combatants outside of the ring. So why didn't she just sneak in and assassinate everyone that she didn't want to marry once she determined that Toby was the one that she wanted? She clearly had no qualms with murder, and it was obviously possible for her to go in and just kill everybody. She was a superpower, okay? Talking about the prose, for the most part, the prose in this book is consistent. The author's voice is strong, and you get a good sense of her style of writing. I would also say that the consistency is there in Eve the Awakening, at least based on the first 20% that I've read so far. I do think that this book could have been cut down by at least half, if not a little less than that, and the story would have been the same. Some chapters felt extremely long and self-indulgent at times, specifically looking at You, chapter 17, with all of the gaggling girls bathing Toby and talking about his dick. I think there are areas where the prose could have also been better by going into descriptions specifically with the violence, though many of the action scenes were well done and easy to follow. I'm thinking more descriptions around the action scenes themselves. I specifically have a note here saying, OMG, this is kind of gross, is repeated in a section rather than describing what it is that the characters are looking at, which weakened the tension because we didn't get to see the grossness that they were looking at. There was also some clumsy repetition here and there that could have been cleaned up to make interactions a bit sharper. An example is the line, "Ah, yes, the prince bowed his head. I'm Flynn." "The prince," Toby mumbled. A clearer version of the same line could have looked like this. "Ah, yes," he bowed his head. "The prince," Toby mumbled. Flynn is fine. There are so many scenes that more or less repeat for a while. Chapter 17 is an example of that, but then many of the arguments go back and forth like, you're touching me, you're not touching me, you're touching me, you're not touching me, just to work the characters angry and tie them up until they're interrupted. It didn't read as organic, but a plot device to keep a secret going that otherwise wouldn't make any sense. Also, this book does love the word cock and cunt, like a lot. I can say I was not expecting that. It does have this weird tendency to try to sound antiquated and contemporary at different parts, which was a little bit strange for me. Unrelated, but there's also a lot of sex talk in this book, like discussions of sexual topics or of a sexual nature, and it felt like a lot at times. Bizarre motivations. The crux of this novel is the death tournament to win a marriage with the Blessed Savior, basically a deity. I get that all of the guys going into this thing would have solid constitutions, like might be a little dumb or not fear death for some reason or another. But you've got an artist and literally everyone laughing about how they're all going to die, and I didn't quite understand why many of these characters would even enter this competition just to die. It's one thing to expect the worst, but you still have to hope for the best for yourself. Pretty much everyone who vocalized themselves in here was like, yeah, I'm gonna die, but meh. At least have some faith or hope that if you don't win, then you can at least make it long enough to get released and still get the cash payout for your contribution in this competition. But if they all came in and were just like straight up dead, then of course they're gonna die. They have no motivation to live, and that was kind of weird to me. It also made it hard to root for any of the characters because none of them were rooting for themselves, not even Toby. Except for Milo. Milo was like, bruh, I'm gonna win and I'm gonna go down in a blaze of glory trying. That is how main characters act, and let me just say he was done dirty just to be replaced by Flynn, who had basically the same personality, the only difference being that Flynn had to betray Toby, but Milo wouldn't have betrayed Toby. So then you have Toby, who said he entered for the money to get paid out to his family and to help care for his sister. But even at the beginning of the book, when he was doing field work, his employer wanted to give him extra coin, and he was like, no, please don't overpay me. Bro, lap up that extra money if you need it. Then in the competition, he reiterates again and again how he doesn't care about the Savior or Cosima until the charcoal paintings where he keeps doing pictures of Leila. Then he's trying to convince himself that he is there for Cosima while simultaneously saying he doesn't care about her. He's not even saying that he's pretending to be into Cosima so he doesn't die because of blasphemy. He's just trying to convince himself internally after drawing a bunch of pictures of Leila that he's into Cosima, and I didn't understand that change in his mindset. This is also more jarring, as he says to himself, you risk your life for Cosima every day. No, he risks his life for his family every day since he entered the competition for them. He should have even just been working toward that first dismissal where he could leave since he wasn't interested in Cosima, and that would have been his safe way out. But this thought never actually crossed his mind, even though it seems like it was traditional that at least one person would be released peacefully. There is also a moment when Toby suddenly starts arguing with Leila that it wasn't foolish to enter the contest just to die for the Savior, when he'd literally just been saying the same thing to Milo. Not even pretending outrage, he was genuinely insulted by being called stupid by Leila. Most of the motivations here seem imposed by the author rather than genuine through the characters, and that makes them either jarring or uninspired enough that you go, I don't care though. Like, yay, cool, you came here to die, hope you have a fast death, I guess. We're also told this is the most brutal tournament in history, but like, there are multiple rounds that have nothing to do with strength and nobody dies. Why would you endorse warriors and then have them do a poetry contest thinking that they might win? That's just going to be torture for everybody that has to listen to them come up with poetry. My wishes for the tournament. So, these opinions don't really change the tournament as it was, but they would have been fun or added a little more depth to the tournament itself. I kind of wish that the fertility test was a blowjob to see how much semen was produced and how quickly. Also, it would have been a test to see if there were any opportunists that weren't actually interested in women being entered into the contest. Also, all of the guys should have been stripped naked for this contest and only referred to by their laurels to further dehumanize them. The laurels or titles were used on and off in non-specific situations. Losing all of their identity to the tournament and having to win it back would have been a powerful statement for how these men are treated in this situation. As for the nudity, it would have put everyone on equal footing of vulnerability. And imagine how intimidating it is if you're staring at your nude, bigger than you ever wish you were competition. Finally, the sexual tension between Kaleo and Toby should have been played way up. The Greek inspiration for this makes it very likely that most of these dudes are at least bisexual, and at the very least, Kaleo is the type of guy who likes to dominate and would do it to other men. He shows it more distinctly in the end of the book. Kaleo should have had more animosity with Toby the whole time following the killing of Milo because Toby punched him. There was so much that could have been done with Kaleo and Toby to build tension, but for the most part, Kaleo was ignored throughout the competition, except for at the end and a couple of random places for Toby to land another punch on him, and it was such a waste for their character development. Going into the tournament rules, let's talk about the main event of this book. I'm not sure I ever understood the rules of the tournament. It's not that I need everything explained to me, but I'm thinking about how Leila killed one of the competitors during off hours and nothing happened. Kaleo and others could kill at any time, but didn't, and when they did, it didn't hurt them. So why wasn't it just a murder as many as you can, as quick as you can, to win sort of situation? We're told that the tournament is to find out the best man to take care of the savior. But when we get to the part where Toby doesn't want to show his art, and then they vote people off, and the giant is thrown under the bus for being a really bad dude, they both should have been disqualified because they both showed that they weren't there for the savior's well-being. All of the men were basically being held by the castle, and if they're meant to be moral and safe for the savior, they should be observed at all times, removed as soon as they don't seem to fit, right? But none of this was going on. In fact, the guys constantly showed that they were bad people and nothing happened to them. This was just another way that the book never had teeth. You knew that none of the cardboard villains were going to get anywhere. At times, it felt like the author didn't even want to try because they were just fodder to die anyway, and she wouldn't want you liking any of them anyway. To add to that, the short story The Great Love, which is connected to this story, is about the picking process behind the gladiators. If this is canon and not just a deleted scene that doesn't make sense anymore, and that's why it was deleted, then we have to put that into consideration as well. One of Leila's closest maiden assistants was in charge of picking the men for this competition, and somehow she only picked a bunch of major assholes, and then is later surprised to find out that the guys that she picked are all assholes. I didn't understand. Because certainly none of them put up a front at any point during the competition, so why would they put up a front during the picking process? Like, none of them were that committed to playing a role. Anyway, the biggest thing was, why weren't they just straight up murdering each other if there was no consequences? Seems like the quickest way to end the competition and get to the top. Also, why would the winner of each round get a chance to bang the savior? That just doesn't seem like a very good idea if you want to make sure that whoever is with her is safe. Because you're doing a vetting process, basically. But you're like, if you win this competition, then you could be with her. Sounds like the perfect opportunity to murder the savior. I guess the winner of the contest gets to be the king of the cucks, because everyone in the kingdom knows that a bunch of other men banged your girl during the competition if you didn't win literally every single round. I'm just saying, what if she ended up pregnant with the seed of a guy who you killed to win her hand in marriage? Like, just from safety and respect standpoint, how does this make sense? Finally, if this contest is to find a proper husband for the savior and a king for the kingdom, how is it not just straight over when it's very clear that the savior has a favorite and an endorsed one of the fighters? The guy is legit getting her blessing constantly, and she has stated that he is her favorite. The game should be over right then, shouldn't it? Characters. I'm going to be as brief as I can in this segment. Toby was good at everything he tried his hands at. I could have gotten behind the savior constantly blessing him basically as a cheat code if we saw times where he failed juxtaposed to times that she helped him because she wanted him to win. Instead, he was just always good and always successful and only failed generally when he wanted to. I didn't understand the relationship between Brontes and Leila. He calls her foolish, openly tells his friends that he knows he raised her wrong. I know he wants her dead, but where is this hostility coming from? He killed her mother, so why didn't he just raise her as a brainwashed child, basically, doing exactly what he wants her to say, and doing exactly what he wants her to do, saying what he wants her to say, and ruling the kingdom with her powers while she is clueless to the evil she's doing. Then, instead of just brainwashing this child to act appropriately the way that he wants, he sets up this tournament that he had very little to do with anyway, didn't even help pick the competitors, then had half of them do arts and crafts anyway. just so that he could hire an assassin to sneak in and kill Leila behind the scenes. You'd think that he'd be more involved in this situation if he was really trying to kill Leila, which would have added more tension to the story. But instead, he's mostly hands-off, and then he's just a noisy idiot asshole. Toby was unmotivated by pretty much anything, not even his family. Flynn was just like Milo and didn't feel necessary, but Milo was fodder to piss Toby off for no payoff, and Flynn had to betray Toby. Then Leila came off as an emotionally unstable psycho bitch who lied to Toby and then got upset when Toby didn't know that she was lying. It was a very strange setup for me. None of the other characters acted like they had any agency whatsoever. They were just plain out bad or convenient, changing to give Toby someone to either talk to when his usual friend wasn't available or to attack him because he needed to be victimized again. No one put on a face to ascend to power, so you always knew what was going to happen. I wish more time had been taken to focus on individual motivations and how they showed in ways that each of the characters positioned themselves, or the masks that each of the competitors put on in order to ascend to the throne, rather than making them all blatantly bad people that had to be just downright laughably evil. Even small things would have changed the course of how these people read. Thinking back to the tunnel where no one wanted to walk first, the warriors should have had the stones or desire to lead enough to either argue who should be the leader or were picking off the savants who they thought were fodder anyway, but no one did, and they only mocked each other instead, going, "Nah man, I don't want to go first." It would have been easy enough to go, "Hey you, poet, you don't matter, you go in front." But nobody did that, and I hate to say it, but every last character in here had small dick energy. So now I'm going to list some alternate options of what could have been explored in this plot but wasn't explored. Because like I said, this book was so thick with interesting setups and opportunities that weren't taken. It was so high concept with so many different ways that it could have gone, and here are just a couple of the ideas I had while I was reading it. 1. Everyone is reduced to their laurels during the contest in order to dehumanize them, and you have to win back your right to be human again. Toby tries hard not to lose himself in this contest and the dehumanization tactics, but as he goes through the traumas of deaths and losing his friend, he has to harden up and dehumanize himself in order to not break apart. This would have given him the character development to get harder as things go and to stop being pushed around by the warriors. Eventually, he would see himself as level with them and outsmart them by using the way he thinks as an artist that's so different from how they think as warriors. He also could have lost himself to insanity, the first major switch being when he slices that one guy's neck while others hold him down. That would have been a major character moment. Let Toby shift from trying to remember people's names to humanize them to calling them by their laurels because he has to in order to maintain his own sanity. 2. There could have been a scene before the tournament started where the savants got together in their bunk area to strategize about beating the beasts. This could have been a good chance to build character or develop the individuals and highlight the differences between the beasts versus the savants and how they strategize or work together. The beasts could have just been over there drinking and laughing because they ain't worried about a horde of nerds and they're used to doing this sort of thing. Give a chance here for Kaleo to connect eyes with Toby, give a devious grin, and make that rival connection while Milo is sitting there being like, "Yo, Toby, are you listening? We kind of need to talk about this so we all don't die." Like, at least right out the gate. This also would have helped with making the competitors look a little more serious, though it doesn't help that none of them had any motivation beyond, "Lol, I'm just here to die anyway." 3. Leila's speech on humanizing the contestants would have meant more if the novel had leaned more into the dehumanization factor. It could have come when Toby had already resigned himself to calling everyone by their laurels and his internal struggle of maintaining sanity, humanity, and his life. He could have confronted Leila about this with, "You don't understand why we have to do this the way that we do." Not that it matters with how Leila's written, because she obviously murders a ton of people in this book and no one even talks about that, but actually her murdering so many people just makes her humanization conversations seem even more like meaningless lip service with no real meaning on the theme, which is kind of sad because that's a really thick and meaningful thing to talk about, especially in a death tournament where people are dying to marry somebody. This book just has so many great ideas like this that aren't followed up on. The confrontation then could have left Toby thinking about where he was failing, where his brain was breaking, and even a disconnect between how he feels about his family and what his new mindset is saying about his family, giving way to internal struggle that could have been powerful, especially after Toby says to Leila, "I choose the darkness." Number 4. Another thing that could have been done here with Leila remaining the savior is that if Milo was kept alive, he could have been a friend trying to help Toby keep his humanity as they work through the tournament. Imagine if Milo had survived the first round, watched Toby slowly changing from his best friend into this destructive beast of a man that he barely recognizes, and Milo keeps trying to pull Toby back in. Then imagine Milo actually winning a couple of contests and getting to spend extra time with Cosima, learning about who she is, the shield that she is, the life that she's given up in order to protect Leila, and maybe he finds out that she's been victimized by all of these people that she keeps getting left alone with. Imagine that after finding out all of this information and bonding with her, Milo actually falls in love with Cosima and wants to run away with her. Then he comes back to tell Toby that he thinks that he is in love with Cosima. Crazy, and with Toby being gone and kind of crazy, Toby thinks that Milo means he wants the savior, and Toby at this point thinks that Milo is saying he wants Leila because Toby knows that Leila is the savior, and with Milo saying I'm in love with the girl who's the stand-in for the savior, it just confuses everything, which would then result in Toby killing Milo and having to live with the guilt of killing his best friend because his insanity drove him to think that Milo was going for his girl. Not only that, but then the second book, The Savior's Sister, could have been from Cosima's point of view of how Leila always gets everything and anything that she wants, that when she got to spend time with when she got to spend time with Milo and really bond with him, and it was her first time really being looked at for her, she actually felt special. And then even somehow at the end of this, when Toby ends up killing Milo for Leila, it's just another thing where Cosima is like, I don't get anything for myself. Everything always goes the way for Leila, the way that she wants it. And it would have just been so tragic. Also, Milo being killed trying to help Cosima get out of this terrible situation also would have let him die a hero's death and made it more tragic. Alternatively, Leila could have been visiting the gladiator pit in order to find someone that she could bless to help her take down Brontes, who was trying to kill her and who obviously killed her mother. Because she couldn't kill him with her own 2 hands, she could just then bless a man that would then go and kill for her. Then, once she discovered Toby or bonded with Toby, she could have just been honest with him and used him to kill Brontes. This could have turned Toby and Leila into a team working together with each other to the top that also left other competitors feeling suspicious. It also could have taken away some of the overpowering strength that Leila had, because at this point, Leila is able to do literally everything, so it really doesn't make any sense why Brontes is still alive. Leila is a cutthroat, strong bitch who can do pretty much anything she wants. So, I'm confused on our situation. And then my sixth alternative in here is that some of the other competitors, particularly those hired by Brontes to assassinate Leila, should have at least pretended to be nice guys to court her during the tournament. The behaviors of all didn't make any sense otherwise. Like, didn't Kaleo know what his target looked like when he went in to assassinate somebody? Without anybody else trying to go after Leila, it just feels silly. And like Kaleo and any of the other assassins would have known immediately that Cosima wasn't their target. So they would have been looking somewhere else for their target, because I cannot imagine that Brontes gave his hired assassins a picture of the wrong girl, I know everything I just said is basically me asking for a different story than what was told in this book, and this book is ultimately the author's story being told the way the author wanted to tell it. So I understand that. This is just me saying this is just me sharing some of the different potentials I saw in this story that made me disappointed with where it didn't go. And I'm crying a little bit about it, okay? So in closing, this book had a super interesting concept and a great setup. The cast of characters was so perfect to set up something really complicated and really dramatic and tragic and powerful. but I don't think it fully committed to what it was doing, so the characters came off as shallow, while the central characters were never in any sort of danger, which was displayed every time Toby assaulted someone and didn't even get so much as a slap in the face. Constantly, it felt like the book was dropping reminders that nothing mattered, and the book was ultimately going to go exactly where you thought it was going to go with minimal challenge. Toby's whipped and beaten to broken bones, and still there is nothing, so it was just... There were also so many missed opportunities throughout for characterization. One I super wished would have been taken was when the Adonis character said, "He's looking at me with daggers," to his friend, when he should have mocked Toby with, "What are you looking at, artist? You want to get fucked?" Because this would have been much more brutal, assertive. This would have been a much more brutal assertion of dominance rather than a random opining, and there was so much opportunity to amp up characterization, threat, and tension between everybody in this book. Toby needed a little more motivation to make himself worth following. Most of the time, he was just straight up apathetic about literally everything, when he could have been motivated to enter and survive long enough to make it back to the formal dismissal and return to his family with the money that he entered for. That would have helped a lot in making him somebody that you wanted to root for. Plus, Toby wasn't even pretending to want Cosima, which made it look like it really didn't matter if people lied to get into this contest, and apparently everybody was doing that anyway. Another missed opportunity that stood out to me was when Toby said, "I suppose I'm not cut out for this tournament." That wasn't new information for him. He entered this tournament not because he was well prepared, and not because he was a warrior, and not because he wanted the throne. He did it for his family. So instead of saying, "I suppose I'm not cut out for this," Toby should have said that he entered for his family, and he knew that he wasn't cut out for this, but he cared more about his family and taking care of them than playing it safe. In my opinion, Leila ended up being way too abrasive for me, and I know, coming from me, when I've got my own totally abrasive female characters, I just think it's more to do with Leila being totally powerful and victimized at the same time, and also murdering a bunch of people without caring and without having any repercussions whatsoever. And then also, I feel like she's still supposed to be considered a hero. So let me know what you think. Is she supposed to be a hero, or is she supposed to be, a villain? Because the intentions of the author in that way, I think, sort of shift the perception of how well that character is written, if you know what I mean. Also, Leila was kind of an elitist when she talked about how most people are designed for mediocrity, but not us. And I don't understand how Cosima could totally dismiss Leila's wishes when they're in the competition, because even outside of that contest show, Leila was still the savior with all of the powers, and she would be able to punish Cosima for not withholding her desires. At times, the romance scenes felt a little self-indulgent and on the long side, but it did feel like the author really enjoyed writing these characters and writing those scenes. So there is that. So that's my end of the review wrap up with all of my end of review thoughts. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Have you read The Savior's Champion? What were your thoughts on it, your experiences with it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? And anything in between. Looking forward to your thoughts on that if anybody still wants to talk about this book. Until next time, have a great weekend and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out? The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him. Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?